Okay, so this is Gareth, and I'm going to do the newbie Booktube tag. So I didn't want to do this until I had subscribers, because I thought I didn't want to just talk to myself. And I've got 102 subscribers at this present moment, which is cool. So thank you, everyone, for those people for subscribing. So this kind of justifies it a bit. So the newbie tag is quite a cool idea where I say something about why I started the channel, what kind of stuff I read, and what my favourite books are, that kind of thing. So I'm going to get on with that. The first question is, why did I start this channel? I've had kind of big periods of reading, and I'm in a very active period of reading at the minute. It's over the last sort of, I don't know, 4 years. I've been reading constantly, and there was a bit of a gap when I did my degree, and I was just reading non-fiction, and then after that I sort of had a little slump where I didn't read a lot. So my teens and my 20s I read a lot, and then there's this little gap in the 30s. So now I'm reading a lot more, and I definitely feel like I've caught up now. And basically I use goodreads.com, which I think is brilliant. I use that and some of the booktubers that are already on the internet to catch up on what I've missed out on in the gap, and just to kind of get a feel for what I might like for some of the new authors that have come out, and get a feel for the stuff I just would like to build my reading on. And I really loved using Goodreads and the Booktube community to help me do that. And I just felt like it would be nice to join in on that, really. So I love talking about books, and it's not really that common to get into a conversation about books with your friends. It's usually films and TV and music that you talk about. So it's nice to kind of use this as a platform to do that. So that's what I did. So it is basically pretty much bouncing off the Goodreads and Booktube experience and thinking I wanted to join in on that, really. Second question, what do I think I can offer Booktube? Okay, so it's not going to be much video editing involved. I only use Windows Movie Maker, so it's not like amazing edits or anything, but I'm hoping it'll be interesting content. So far I've done some themed ones, so I've done a video on time travel books. I've done a couple of, or at least one author profile. I did the Ursula Le Guin one. I'm going to do other author profiles as well as I go along. So I'm going to group some books together. I do like grouping books together. There's going to be a post-apocalyptic one soon, and I'm going to do one about body snatching and body transforming, which would be cool. So I'm going to do that one. So I enjoyed putting those together. But I think the big answer to the question about what I could offer, when I was looking at Booktube a lot, it did seem like there was a lot of YA stuff. It could be because of the age of the people that were doing it. They started doing Booktube quite young, so therefore they were reading books intended for young people. That could be a thing. But I will be doing, I won't really be touching on YA, so I'll be doing lots of adult science fiction. But also in general, I'll be doing other things. So because I read quite a variety of things besides science fiction, although science fiction is my main thing, but I will be doing some videos on those other things as well, which I'll touch on in a minute. So yeah, I do think I can offer something a bit different with the content. So the actual books I choose to do or how I present it might be a bit different. That's the intention anyway. But yeah, it won't be very interesting editing, so that's definitely something I can't really offer at the minute. But yeah, that's what I think will be interesting about my channel, the actual books that I cover and how I group them together and that kind of thing. One other thing about what I intend to add as well, one thing that I didn't find was on YouTube, which I think is quite a different thing that I did previously, but I might do another one if I can find some more that are worth talking about and grouping together in this sort of video. But humour in science fiction is a big thing for me. So it's what I write. There's also what I love to find. So because of like Stainless Steel Rat and Hitchhikers, it was a big thing for me when I was a kid. And there is a video I've already done of comedy science fiction books. So look that up if you think that sounds cool. And I did the graphic novel one where I mentioned Electric State. and I did a cartoonist one as well, because I'm massively into cartoonists. So, for example, huge fan of Charles Addams. That's the Addams Family there. So I do collect cartoonist books. So that's another thing that I didn't really see on YouTube, Booktube, before I started doing that. So those kind of things are what I feel like I'll add to Booktube. What got you reading, and what books did you start reading first? Okay, so clearly it was school that got me reading. So when I did my O-levels, years and years back, I was reading. I remember reading 1984. I remember reading Catcher in the Rye, and I also remember reading Gerald Durrell's My Family and Other Animals. I remember liking that a lot. But it was a big deal reading 1984, and that made me want to delve a little bit more. When I was at school, I read Lord of the Rings as well. That wasn't covered in O-level, obviously, but I read Lord of the Rings as well, and that got me reading lots of fantasy stuff. I love the Belgariad, which David Eddings' 5-part book series. So I read that, the Belgariad, at the same time as well. I started reading the Harry Harrison books, specifically the Stainless Steel Rat series. I loved that when I was a kid. I've kind of caught up with some of the extra ones he's written after those first 5 recently, and I still like them. So the Stainless Steel Rat series was something I read when I was a kid. Started reading Terry Pratchett when I was a kid. I started reading Stephen King when I was a kid as well. So one of my first books I read voluntarily outside of school was Night Shift, which is a short story collection. I read a lot of short stories at the time. So yeah, delving into those kind of Alfred Hitchcock anthology books and those kind of things. So I'd find short stories written by Robert Bloch and that kind of thing. That was what I started reading. And 2 big authors that were really important to me when I first started reading were Richard Matheson, most famous for I Am Legend, but I've read pretty much everything he's done now, and Robert Sheckley. I've read almost everything he's done, but he's done he's done some random stuff, like he's written some Western stuff and some spin-off, like film, TV kind of spin-off things as well. But I've read tons of his books, and he's an absolute favourite. I used to say that Robert Sheckley was my favourite author. I don't really feel like I can say that now, but clearly he's one of them, and I've sort of carried his madness in my head for years. So Robert Sheckley is an amazing man. And kind of linked, because I do think Douglas Adams was influenced by Robert Sheckley. I did read the Hitchhiker's books when I was younger as well. So those were sort of the first books I read that got me into reading, and I absolutely loved those books. So more recently, I'll give you just a few favourite authors that I've got into recently in the last few years. Claire North, that book Touch, I think is unbelievable. An absolutely brilliant book. And I've only got one of hers now that I haven't read, which is the 84K one, which is sitting next to it there. I've read all of her other books. I think she's amazing. I just did a video on the Sudden Appearance of Hope, which I thought was a really brilliant book. Touch is my favourite, but I think most people's favourite is the 14 lives. The first 15 lives of Harry August. That last life is quite important in the book, so can't miss that one out. First 15 lives of Harry August, which just blew me away, equally like Touch did. Claire North is a big favourite of mine. But also Ursula Le Guin I've now discovered, so I'm a big fan of hers. Did a video of Ursula Le Guin, didn't I? Just mentioned that. And Becky Chambers, I think, is fantastic. Adrian Tchaikovsky I've now discovered, and I want to read as much of his stuff as I can find. I've read a few of his now, and I've bought a fantasy trilogy. So I hadn't read his fantasy stuff yet, but I've bought that to read. So yeah, so those are kind of my favourite authors, really, and the people I look for. But clearly, there's loads of other people that I'll be looking for in between. Okay, so the next question is, why do you like reading? It's an interesting question. I think I've got 3 answers, and I think reading is just such an incredible thing. It does expand your mind and your vocabulary, all that stuff, but then that's just academic reasons. 3 big reasons for me. One is the storytelling. Storytelling in books just goes into another level because you've got the internal dialogue in the books. So I'll just give you a few examples of why that's so important. So this, for example, Hyperion, great book, and people love talking about how it seems like the stories are within the kind of sections of each of the book, which are like stories from a different perspective, from different characters' perspective. They're written in a different style. So that's definitely a literary thing. If that does get transferred into TV or film, which it could do, if it does, I know it's been optioned loads of times and it's been in production hell for ages, but if it does, you still won't get those sort of literature tropes that you've got within the different styles of the stories. So that's quite cool. Also, if you think about this one, which I mentioned before, I just love this book so much. The way that that sort of internal dialogue aspect of it is so important because this is about a being that transfers from body to body, and each time they do, their sense of smell and taste changes. All their senses change, and how they understand life is kind of developed through this action of living in someone else's skin for a while, and all that sort of stuff is done so brilliantly within the text that you just think, you know, to do this justice, would you need a voiceover? You know, storytelling within books is such an important thing. And in this one, just choosing this one again, another example of it's quite a hefty one. This one, but it's set. It's like a time travel book that's set within the time of the Black Death, and the again, a despair in the sort of the details of the plague and how people are feeling is done so well in the book, and it's something that books do better than TV and film, really. I mean, TV and film are visual arts, and obviously the visual side of things are better. But yeah, something about the language and the way that they can convey such deep emotions and sensitive situations. So that's the first thing. Two, the narrative voice. So sometimes it's just fun to read the way that people write. I mean, again, I'll refer to Claire Knoll because I love the way she writes. She writes these sort of like she writes in sort of lots of short sentences, it seems. I just the way that the internal voice carries through with the author's narrative voice is just brilliant. So that's a feature, I think, of books, and something I really love. That sometimes you can get on with it, sometimes you can't. So there's a book that I was reading, that one. I read this because I like the concept of it. I read this for a little while, for about 10-15 pages, but I couldn't get on with the narrative voice. I'm going to give it another go before I give up, but that's such an important part of it, how the author writes, just full stop, how they write. Sometimes you can get on with it, most of the time you can, sometimes you can't. So that's another thing that I think is fascinating and interesting about books. And then the third thing is just the love of words. So I'm a songwriter, and I've written poetry as well, and I've obviously written the books now as well. So I do love words. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I write. I do find them fascinating. It's an interesting language. It's the only language I know, but you can do so much with it. For example, I've just started getting into John Steinbeck. So I know he's a classic author that I should have discovered years ago, but I only discovered him a couple of years ago, and I've read about 6 of his books, and I think he's brilliant. But it's the language, it's so vivid, and his use of words is just amazing. So love of words is another reason why I love reading. So those 3 things I think encompass why I love books. And then the last question, what are your plans for the channel? So several things I've got planned. Some are follow-ups to what I've already done, but there's loads of new stuff I want to put up. So I'm kind of planning a Stephen King one at the minute. I know there's a lot of Stephen King booktube videos out there, but it just seems weird for me to read so much Stephen King and not do one on him. So I've picked 10 books I'm going to do soon. I might do another 10 later in a year's time or something, but yeah, I'm going to do a Stephen King one, and I'll be covering some of the recent things he's written as well as some of the old classics. So I'm going to do that. I want to do a follow-up to the music books one I did, because there's loads of those around and there's really good stuff to talk about. So I'm going to do one of those. I might do another graphic novel one, because I've got a few really good ones I've been reading, and I've got some author stuff, and I'm thinking I might do a more general Twilight Zone themed video yet as well, but I don't know how to do that. I don't know how what to focus on, but I do have this real love for the Twilight Zone, and Richard Matheson is kind of connected to that in a big way. So if I do a Richard Matheson one, that might lead me into doing a Twilight Zone one. So yeah, some author profile stuff, and occasionally I've done, just because I've been blown away by a book so much, I've just immediately done a review of it, which I wasn't going to do originally. I wasn't going to do single books. I was going to try and group them together. And I'm going to do that body snatching, body transforming, body morphing kind of themed book one as well. So yeah, that's my plan for the channel for the next few months. But yeah, if that sounds interesting, then please subscribe, and to make comments about those people that I've mentioned. If you've read anything by Robert Sheckley, Ursula Le Guin, Richard Matheson, Harry Harrison, if you like those people, Terry Pratchett, Douglas Adams, Adrian Tchaikovsky, Claire North, Becky Chambers, the new people I talked about. If you like those people, then make a comment about that. Matt Haig's really good. I'm just about to read this as well. So this is relatively recent, so I'm looking forward to delving into this, because I know it's going to be good. I don't really want to put that back in. But yeah, there's lots of books that I know are worthy of a video that I'm about to read, so that could happen as well. Interestingly enough, this book, I really loved this book, and I read the fantasy book that was like one of a duology that I read that I didn't like that much. So that kind of like, I was like, what? And then, but he's just done a prequel to this one. So this is coming out soon, this prequel to this one. I thought this was so good. So I'll be interested to find out how good that prequel is. So there's lots going on. There's obviously millions of books to read, and there's lots of things to talk about. So yeah, the plans will spread out into other things, but that's the idea at the minute. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you on the next one.